The American economy. The United States is the largest foreign investor in Brazil. In 2022, Americans accounted for nearly 30% of total foreign direct investment in Brazil, with a stock exceeding $228 billion. By 2023, the number of investment announcements from American companies in Brazil increased by 50% compared to 2022, demonstrating growing interest. Key areas of investment include technology and the green economy. These findings are from a study conducted by AmCham, American Chamber of Commerce for Brazil, in partnership with Apex, Brazilian Trade and Investment Promotion Agency. Brazil ranks 5th in sending tourists to the U.S. In 2024 data up to October, Brazil sent 1.5 million tourists to the United States, making it the 5th largest non-continental country to send visitors to the U.S. This figure excludes Canada and Mexico. Brazil trails behind the UK, India, Germany, and Japan in this ranking. The United States is the second largest source of tourists for Brazil. Although significant, the absolute number of American tourists visiting Brazil is only 1/3 of the number of Brazilians traveling to the U.S. By October 2024, approximately 572,000 Americans had visited Brazil, placing the U.S. second among the countries sending the most tourists to Brazil. Argentina holds the top spot, with over 1.5 million visitors to Brazil in 2024. The American economy is by far the largest in the world. The U.S. GDP stands at $28 trillion, while Brazil's GDP is $2 trillion, highlights Leonardo Trevisan, professor of international relations at ESPM. Excluding China, whose GDP is around $19 trillion, you would need to sum the GDPs of the next 8 countries to equal the American GDP. They are the world's largest buyers, the wealthiest, he says. The United States is far more important to Brazil than Brazil is to the U.S. Data highlights the asymmetry in the relationship between Brazil and the United States, with the Americans having greater weight, says Lucas Ferraz, coordinator of the Center for Global Business Studies at FGV-EESP. From an economic and geopolitical perspective, this asymmetry explains Trump's statement. The U.S. is much more important to us than we are to them. Trade between Brazil and the U.S. The United States is Brazil's second largest trading partner. In 2024, the U.S. accounted for 12% of Brazilian exports and 15.5% of imports. This amounted to approximately $40.3 billion in exports and $40.5 billion in imports from the U.S. last year, according to Brazilian government data. Brazil ranks 18th among exporters to the United States. The importance of Brazil to the U.S. is much smaller. Brazil was the 9th largest importer of American products in 2024, up to November, according to U.S. government data. As an exporter, Brazil falls to 18th place, behind countries like Singapore, Malaysia, Vietnam, and Thailand. Brazil exports crude oil and imports machinery. Brazil's primary export to the U.S. is crude oil, 14% of exports in 2024, followed by semi-finished iron and steel products, 8.8%, aircraft, 6.7%, and unroasted coffee, 4.7%. On the other hand, Brazil primarily imported engines and machinery, 15%, petroleum fuel oils, 9.7%, aircraft and their parts, 4.9%, and natural gas, 4.1%, from the U.S. Investments and tourism. The United States is the largest foreign investor in Brazil. In 2022, Americans accounted for nearly 30% of total direct foreign investment in Brazil, with a stock exceeding $228 billion. In 2023, the number of investment announcements by American companies in Brazil was 50% higher than in 2022, showing growing interest. The main areas of focus are technology and green economy, according to a study by AmCham, American Chamber of Commerce for Brazil, in partnership with Apex, Brazilian Trade and Investment Promotion Agency. Brazil ranks 5th in sending tourists to the U.S. Brazil sent 1.5 million tourists to the United States in 2024, data up to October, making it the 5th non-continental country to send the most visitors, behind the UK, India, Germany, and Japan. The United States is the second largest sender of tourists to Brazil. However, the absolute number is 1/3 of the number of Brazilians visiting the U.S. Up to October 2024, around 572,000 Americans visited Brazil, placing the U.S. second among countries sending tourists to Brazil in 2024, behind Argentina, with over 1.5 million visitors. Import tariffs and product substitution. Brazilian import tariffs are higher than those imposed by the U.S. According to Ferraz, there is currently an asymmetry in tariffs between Brazil and the U.S. Brazilian import tariffs are much higher than those they charge us. This was highlighted by Trump during his campaign, and Brazil must be attentive to potential protectionist measures, he says. The U.S. has the capacity to seek substitutes for Brazilian products. For Ferraz, Brazilian exports can be replaced by the U.S. For an economy as large as the American one, the likelihood of zero substitution is slim. We cannot be complacent and assume that our exports to the U.S. are unique, he says. The role of Brazil. Brazil is a historic ally and plays a significant role for American companies. Even though the American economy is massive, Brazil is important in the production chain of American companies, which manufacture parts of their products in Brazil. Sectors include the automotive and electronic equipment industries. American entrepreneurs with business ties to Brazil would not echo Trump's statement. Brazil has decades of integrated production chains, which is crucial for both sides. It would be possible to replace this elsewhere, but it would be costlier and would forego decades of relationship building. This would be a significant inconvenience. In his first term, Trump threatened to increase taxes on steel and aluminum from Brazil but eventually relented. After a conversation with then-President Bolsonaro, the Republican reversed his position. Opportunities amidst challenges. According to Ferraz, the commercial conflicts heightened by Trump may create opportunities for Brazil. One example is the EU's increased willingness to finalize a deal with Mercosur. Other markets Brazil might explore include Canada and Mexico. There are risks, but we can use this moment to diversify our exports and gain access to new markets, he concludes. I have been closely following what is happening in Brazil. It is sad to see how a country with so much potential is being governed so irresponsibly. President Lula is a socialist who wants to turn Brazil into an economic disaster. Just like many other countries that followed this failed path, Lula's policies are an attack on economic freedom, entrepreneurship, and the Brazilian worker. He is suffocating the middle class with high taxes while promoting a bloated and inefficient government agenda. This is not what Brazil deserves. Under my leadership, the United States was an example of economic growth and strength. Brazil could be on the same path, but Lula has chosen the opposite direction. He is aligning with authoritarian regimes and turning away from partnerships with countries that could truly help Brazil prosper. The Brazilian people are incredible, hardworking, and full of energy. They deserve much more than the empty promises of a government that prioritizes ideology over progress. It is time to wake up and realize that leaders like Lula do not bring solutions, only problems. The United States is the world's greatest economic power because we follow a simple principle. Economic freedom drives progress. During my administration, we cut taxes, reduced regulations, and made the economy grow like never before. That's what happens when you trust the people and let the market do its work. Now look at Brazil, an incredible country, full of natural resources, rich culture, and hardworking people. But what is happening under Lula's government? He is implementing a socialist agenda that stifles the private sector, destroys investor confidence, and burdens the citizens with the weight of an overgrown government. Lula is raising taxes, expanding state control, and aligning with authoritarian regimes instead of building real partnerships with strong democracies like the United States. This policy will only drag Brazil backwards. He promises growth and progress but delivers inflation, debt, and capital flight. Brazilians deserve better. You have the potential to become an economic superpower, but you won't get there with leaders who put ideology above prosperity. As long as I'm speaking out, I will continue to advocate for nations to follow the American example. Freedom, capitalism, and strength. Lula, take note.